The coffee was still hot when my son slid the folder across the kitchen table. I had made it myself, the way I always do: 2 scoops of dark roast, a pinch of cinnamon, the old percolator my husband bought at a yard sale in 1987 that I have refused to throw away for reasons I cannot fully explain. The kitchen smelled the way it always smells on a Tuesday morning in October in southeastern Ohio. Wood smoke drifting in from somewhere down the road. Wet leaves, the faint sweetness of the apple butter I had put up the weekend before. My son sat across from me in his father's chair. He had not asked permission to sit there. He never does anymore. The folder was manila, the kind you buy in bulk from an office supply store. My name was written on the tab in black marker. Not his handwriting, his wife's. I recognized the rounded letters, the way she draws a small loop at the top of every capital M. "We need to talk about the house," he said. I wrapped both hands around my coffee mug and looked at him. He is 51 years old. He has his father's jaw and his grandfather's impatience, and he has spent the last 3 years looking at me the way people look at something they are trying to figure out how to move. "All right," I said. He opened the folder. "I have lived in this house for 38 years. I came here as a young wife with a newborn on my hip and a second-hand crib in the back of a pickup truck, and I have never once in all those years wanted to be anywhere else. The porch boards creak in the same places they always have. The window in the upstairs hallway sticks every September when the wood swells. There is a mark on the doorframe in the kitchen where I tracked my son's height every birthday from age 3 to age 16. And the last line, the one that says 16, is at my eye level, and sometimes when I am standing at the sink, I look at it and feel the full weight of everything that has passed. My husband died 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and merciless, the way that particular disease tends to be. He was here in June and gone by November, and the months in between were not something either of us would have chosen. After he died, my son began calling more often. At first I thought it was grief. I thought he was checking on me the way a son does when he has just lost his father and suddenly understands that parents are not permanent. But the calls had a shape to them, a direction. "You're alone out there. That property is a lot to manage. Have you thought about what happens if something goes wrong?" "Mom, be reasonable. I am 67 years old. I walk 2 miles every morning. I keep a garden. I still bake my own bread. I do not consider myself a woman in need of managing." But I listened, and I watched, and I waited. The papers in the folder were a deed transfer. My house, my land, 11 acres that my husband and I paid off the last of in 2009. The day we went out to dinner to celebrate like we had won something, because we had being transferred into a family trust. My son's name was on the trust documents. His wife's name was listed as co-trustee. Mine was not. "This protects the asset," he said. He had clearly practiced this word, asset. If anything happens to you, there's no probate, no delay. It goes directly into the trust, and we can manage it properly. I turned the pages slowly. "Where is my name?" I asked. "You're the beneficiary. You still live here. Nothing changes day to day, but I no longer own it. It's a trust, Mom. It's a legal structure. It doesn't mean..." "It means," I said, setting the pages down very carefully, "that I would be living in a house that belongs to you." He leaned back in his chair. There was something in his face that I had been watching develop for 3 years. A particular expression: patient, slightly pained. The look of someone dealing with a problem that keeps resisting resolution. He gets it from his mother's side, that stubbornness. I've always found a kind of dark humor in that. "We also looked at some places," he said. He reached into the folder and pulled out a brochure, Sunrise Ridge Senior Community. There was a photograph of a white-haired woman sitting in a garden, smiling at nothing. The kind of smile people put on when someone points a camera at them and tells them to look happy. "It's 40 minutes from our house," he said. Nice amenities. You'd have your own apartment. I looked at the brochure. I looked at my son. Your father built that back porch with his own hands, I said. I know he did. He is buried 20 minutes from here. I visit him on Sundays. Mom. No, I said. Not today. He looked at me with that expression, again the patient, pained one. And I understood that he had already decided how this was going to end. He had already built the timeline in his head. He was just waiting for me to catch up to it. What he did not know was that I had been building my own. My granddaughter had called me 2 months earlier on a Sunday afternoon. She is 24, studying to be a paralegal, living in Columbus with 2 roommates and a very large orange cat she has named Senator. She calls me every Sunday without fail, which is more than I can say for most people. Grandma, she said, has anyone been asking you to sign anything? I told her about the conversations, the questions about the property, the brochures for senior communities that had started appearing in my mailbox, which I had assumed my son was sending until I noticed his wife's return address on one of the envelopes. My granddaughter was quiet for a long moment. I need you to do something, she said. I need you to call an estate attorney. Not the one Dad uses. Someone you find yourself. Why? Because I went home for Dad's birthday last month and I heard them talking. I wasn't supposed to hear. I don't think they knew I was still in the house. She paused. They were talking about the land value, the 11 acres. There's a developer someone my father knows who wants to put a subdivision out there. Grandma, the property is worth a lot more than any of us knew. I sat down at the kitchen table, in my chair, the one that has always been mine. How much more? I asked. She told me. I was quiet for a while after that. Call the attorney Monday morning, she said. Please. I called Monday morning. Her name was Patricia. She had an office above a dry cleaning shop on the main street in town, and she wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and spoke with the particular directness of a woman who has spent 30 years watching families make expensive mistakes. I brought everything. The deed, the mortgage history, my husband's will, the folder my son had slid across the table. I had photographed every page before handing it back and saying I needed time to think. Patricia looked at the photographs on my phone for a long time without speaking. They didn't file anything yet, she said. No. They want me to sign. And you haven't. No. She looked at me over her reading glasses. Good, she said. Let's talk about what you want. What I wanted was simple. I wanted to stay in my house. I wanted to be left alone to manage my own affairs. I wanted it to be clear, in a way that could not be misunderstood or slowly negotiated away, that I was not confused, I was not declining, and I was not an asset to be transferred. We spent 2 hours in her office that first day. I came back 3 more times over the following weeks. I signed documents. I made decisions. I updated my will, which I had not touched since my husband died, and I made choices in it that I had not previously considered but which, once I considered them, felt entirely right. Patricia told me I could simply refuse to sign my son's documents, and the matter would be settled. Legally speaking. I could, I said. But I want him to understand, I said, not just be told. I want him to see it. She looked at me for a moment. All right, she said. Then, let's make sure there's something to see. My son called 3 weeks after the kitchen table meeting to ask if I had looked at the papers. I have, I said. And? I think we should have a family meeting, I said. I'd like everyone there, you, your wife, your sister. He paused. My daughter had been largely absent from these conversations, living in Portland now, working as a nurse. We talk every week. She is not the kind of woman who covets other people's property. She is also not the kind of woman who knew any of this was happening, because I had not told her yet, and I had reasons for that. A family meeting, he said. Sunday. Dinner. Here. I'll make a roast. Another pause. He was recalculating. In his mental timeline, I was still catching up. A family dinner felt like progress. "Okay," he said. "Sure, that sounds good." "Wonderful," I said. "And tell your wife to bring that potato casserole. You know the one." My daughter arrived Saturday night, the night before. I had called her on Thursday and told her everything. She sat at the kitchen table, my son's usual chair, I noticed, and she sat in it without hesitation, the way she always has, and listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "How long?" she asked. The developer conversation was apparently 8 months ago, but the calls started earlier than that, maybe 2 years. "Mom, I know. Does he think she stopped? Does he actually think you can't manage your own life?" I thought about this. "I think," I said slowly, "that he has convinced himself it's for my benefit. I think when he looks at me, he sees someone who needs to be protected from her own decisions. And I think that belief is convenient for him in a way that he may not be fully examining." My daughter pressed her palms flat on the table the way she does when she is trying to stay calm. "What do you need me to do tomorrow?" she asked. I told her. She nodded once, a clean, decisive nod, the kind her father used to make when a thing was settled. "All right," she said. "Make the roast. I'll bring the wine." Sunday arrived cold and bright, the way the best October days do in Ohio. I had been up since 5. The roast went in at 8. I had set the table with the good dishes. The ones I only bring out for holidays, blue and white with a small flower pattern around the rim that my husband always called the fancy plates, with the same tone of affectionate mockery every single time. Patricia arrived at 11, because I had asked her to come early. She brought her briefcase and sat in the living room with a cup of coffee, and I showed her where the bathroom was and told her to help herself to anything in the kitchen, and she smiled in that dry, steady way of hers and said she was fine. My granddaughter drove up from Columbus. She came in through the back door the way she always does and hugged me for a long time without saying anything, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright. "You look good, Grandma," she said. "I feel good," I said. And I meant it. My son and his wife arrived at noon. He was wearing the kind of casual clothes that people wear when they want to look relaxed and do not feel relaxed. Pressed, dark jeans. A collared shirt with no tie. His wife was carrying the potato casserole in a glass dish with a towel wrapped around the handles. She smiled at me at the door, a careful smile, and I smiled back with the same care. They saw Patricia in the living room. My son stopped in the hallway. "Who is that?" he asked. "That's Patricia," I said. "She's my attorney. Come in. Take off your coats. Dinner's almost ready." The moment at the table, when Patricia set the papers in front of me and I signed them while my son watched, was quieter than I expected. There were no raised voices. That is not who we are, most of us in this family. We are a family that speaks in careful sentences and long silences and pointed looks across tables. My son looked at the documents for a long time. He had come with his folder. He had set it on the table after dinner with the same deliberate motion I remembered from 3 weeks before, the same practiced word protect, and I had let him explain it again. I wanted him to say it in front of everyone, his sister, his daughter. Patricia, sitting quietly at the far end of the table with her briefcase. When he finished, I said, "Thank you. I understand what you've put together, and I want to show you what I've put together." Patricia opened her briefcase. What I had put together was this: a properly structured trust, with my name as the sole trustee, a clear and witnessed statement of my current cognitive status, signed by my doctor, my attorney, and 2 neighbors who have known me for over 20 years, establishing that I am of sound mind and fully capable of managing my own affairs. A revised will, and a letter, written in my own hand, addressed to my son, which I did not read aloud but which I set in front of him and watched him read. I had written the letter at the kitchen table on a Tuesday morning with the percolator going and the smell of wood smoke coming in from down the road. I had written it 3 times before I wrote it the way I wanted. I told him that I understood he was afraid, that watching a parent age is frightening, and that his fear was not something I held against him. I told him that I had loved him for 51 years, and that I planned to love him for as long as I had left. I told him that love is not the same thing as permission, that caring about someone is not the same thing as being entitled to make their decisions for them. I told him that this house is mine, that I built a life here, with his father, and then without his father, and that I intend to continue building it for as long as I am able. That I had reviewed the offer from the developer and found it interesting but not compelling. That if I ever decide to sell this land, I will sell it because I want to a buyer I choose, on a timeline I set. I told him that I had updated my will and that I wanted him to hear this from me directly, not from an attorney after I was gone. My granddaughter would receive the house and the property. My daughter would receive the remainder of the estate. His share had been adjusted to reflect what I described, carefully, as a difference in demonstrated values. That was the line that made him go still. His wife put her hand on his arm. He did not look at her. "Mom," he said. "I'm not finished," I said. I told him that none of this was irreversible, that wills can be changed, that relationships can be repaired, that the version of him that used to sit at this table and ask his father to pass the salt and argue about baseball and fall asleep on the couch during the late game, that person is still someone I believe exists, that I am not asking him to apologize today, in front of everyone, because I do not think shame is useful. I am asking him to come back to this table next Sunday, just the 2 of us, and talk to me the way he used to. He read the letter twice. I watched him read it. His wife was very quiet. My daughter was looking at the blue and white plates. My granddaughter was looking at her father. When he looked up from the letter, his face had changed. The patient, pained expression was gone. What was underneath it was something I had not seen in a long time, something younger, something uncertain, something that looked, if I am being honest, a little bit like the boy who used to stand in the kitchen doorway in his pajamas and ask if there were any pancakes left. I didn't think he started. "I know you didn't," I said. "We ate dinner. The roast was good. The potato casserole was, I will admit, excellent." My daughter poured wine and made a deliberate effort to talk about ordinary things, her work, her apartment in Portland, a book she had been reading, and slowly, the way a room warms up after a cold door has been closed, the conversation loosened and spread. My son was quiet for most of it, but he stayed. After dinner, while his wife and daughter were in the kitchen washing up, and my daughter had stepped out onto the porch, he came and stood next to me at the window. We looked out at the backyard, at the garden I had put to bed for the winter, at the old maple that was still holding half its leaves, in the way that particular tree always does, stubborn well into November. "I thought I was helping," he said. "I know." The developer, he approached me. He said the land was worth. "I thought if we set it up properly, you wouldn't have to worry." "I don't worry about money," I said. "I have enough. I have always had enough. What I would worry about is losing this." I gestured at the window, at the yard, at the back porch his father built, at the line of trees at the edge of the property that I have watched change color every year for 38 autumns. What I would worry about is losing my place in my own life. He was quiet for a long time. "I'm sorry," he said. It came out like something he had been holding for a while, a word with weight behind it, not a practiced word. "I know," I said. I put my hand on his arm, the way his grandmother used to do, and we stood there at the window for a little while without speaking. Patricia left at 4 o'clock. She shook my hand at the door and said I had handled it well and that she would file everything with the county Monday morning. My granddaughter stayed to help with the dishes and then sat on the back porch with me while the sun went down, both of us wrapped in the old quilt that lives on the porch chair from September through December. She did not talk much. She is good at sitting in comfortable silence, which is a quality I have always admired. "Are you okay?" she asked eventually. I thought about the question. I thought about the folder my son had slid across this table 3 weeks ago, and the way I had photographed every page before handing it back. I thought about Patricia's office above the dry cleaning shop. I thought about the letter I had written 3 times at the kitchen table. I thought about my son's face when he read it, the young, uncertain thing underneath the careful expression. "Yes," I said. "I'm okay." The maple at the edge of the yard was losing the last of its leaves in the evening wind. Small, bright pieces of red and gold lifting and scattering, and I watched them go, and did not feel sad about it. That is the thing about October in Ohio. Everything is letting go of something. And there is a kind of order to it that I have always found, deeply comforting. My daughter came out and sat on the other side of me. The 3 of us shared the quilt. "Next Sunday," she said. "Are you really having him back?" "I am," I said. "By yourself?" "By myself." She nodded. She understood. The last of the light went orange and then gray over the back field. The apple butter smell had faded. The wood smoke was still there. I have lived in this house for 38 years. I have made coffee in this kitchen every morning for 38 years. I have watched this maple from this porch through 38 Octobers, and I intend, with a clarity and a stubbornness that I have come to regard as among my best qualities, to watch it through 38 more. I am still here. I still decide. I did not win anything my son would have recognized as a victory. There was no single dramatic moment, no gasp in a crowded room, no gavel coming down. There was just a folder of my own, placed on the same table where his folder had been, and the simple weight of a woman who had taken the time to understand exactly what she owned and exactly what she intended to do with it. That was enough. I kept this house. I kept this table. I kept this life that I built, nail by nail, year by year, through grief and through joy and through every ordinary Tuesday morning that deserves to be counted. And I kept my son. That last part matters most.